Well, good evening. Welcome to another Complete Racing Solutions membership number 77, I believe we're on. Uh, I may need to get corrected on that, but I think that's my notes are correct. And I just want to welcome all of you guys. Thank you so much for joining us live. If you are here with us, if you're here listening to this or watching it as a recording, thank you so much for utilizing it. I really enjoy putting these together for you, and I appreciate the feedback on how much you guys are getting out of these, updating your notes, and being able to take this to the races on the weekend. So, do definitely appreciate the time and energy that you're putting into these. And hopefully you've noticed that it is definitely catapulting yourself to that next level, whether that be mentally and or physically. So super important. Um, if you're new to this area, first and foremost, I want to say thank you for being a member. If you've been with us since day one, as always, thank you for being a member. If you are new, I just want to encourage you to please take a deep breath, because a lot of the subjects that we're going to talk about tonight literally go over and go through and intertwine all of the previous webinars that we've done together. So if we're sitting here on webinar number 77, think about 76 plus hours of information that's out there in a library format for you, broken down by subject matter. So if you hear us talking about something that doesn't immediately resonate with you, pardon me, take a deep breath. Just recognize it will come, and it will come through repetition, repetition, repetition. And if you are new, I want to let you know that we have a distinct email that we share only with our members. I ask that you keep it that way. Please email me, member@coachrob.com. I check that email myself. I answer all the questions myself. And if you've got questions, we like to try to share them. As you'll see tonight, we've got some questions that have come in, and we like to share those with all of the other members. Everybody's got in a different journey on where they're at, based on experience, where they've come from, where they're currently going through, and where people are trying to get to. So the questions to me are always very fascinating, because everybody's at a different point, and we could say something to three people, and three people will hear it completely different. So to me, the questions help me get a better framework of where you guys are at and some of the things you may be dealing with. With that being said, as a member, I just want to remind everybody, to the best of my ability, unless we have a logistics issue, I always try to put up a video exclusive for you guys every Monday. It's a short 2 to 3 minute video. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about proprioceptive balance. I have a couple in the can right now on advanced proprioceptive balance drills. Unfortunately, I was traveling this past Monday, but it will definitely be parked and ready for you guys next week. And we're adjusting my daily schedule a little bit so that I get a lot of these things in in the hopper, and get the files uploaded so that they're all there. But we're going to continue to add more and more value to the membership area. Again, we want to say thank you for everybody who's been a member up to this point. We're even continuing to work with new partners, and we want to get those partnership deals in there. So yeah, keep the questions, the needs, wants, and desires coming, and we look forward to being able to share them with you guys. So let's jump into this subject about what is it that we've learned so far in 2023. And I want to be very, very cautious, because you may be somebody who's just joined as a member here in the last couple of weeks, and you may not really appreciate the fact of the things that I'm going to talk about tonight. You're like, oh, well, you're just bringing to light the things that I haven't done thus far. No, no, no. Even for somebody who's been a member with us for a long period of time, I don't want you to focus on what you haven't done. I want you to ask yourself, why haven't you done it? And it's not like today's helicopter parents who their little Johnny and little Susie, excuse me, can do no wrong, and they don't ever want to face adversity and all that. You guys have been through enough of these webinars. You know that that's not my approach. What we do want to do is take a look at some of the things that you've worked on, things that are available to you, things that hopefully you've got in place. I want to take the information that you've gathered. I want to run some various concepts through those. And with the data that you have, the concept becomes very personalized. Very, very important. Because I always say it this way. If I talk about the idea that getting 8 to 9 hours of sleep is very, very helpful, and we talk about the release of hormones and it makes you leaner and stronger and all of those benefits, and you're currently somebody who can only get 6 hours of sleep because you have sleep apnea, you work a night schedule, you've got just a crazy a bunch of variables that's causing it very difficult for you to get an adequate amount of sleep, don't try to go from 6 to 9 hours. Try to go 6 hours to 6 hours and 10, 20, 30, small little bite size. If you feel like you're still, you got a sweet tooth and you can't knock the sodas or the junk food candy, don't beat yourself up on it. If you're doing 9 of the other things correct, sure, we still want to get the unnecessary empty calories out of your system, but let's do a little bit of a deeper dive and figure out why you haven't been able to shake them. So that's what you're going to hear a lot about tonight. It is definitely going to be and again, I'm asking you to come to tonight's conversation, being willing to change your perspective. That's really what this is. With knowledge comes much more of an empowerment tool, especially when you understand the why. Because if you understand the why, the chances of you sticking with it are so incredibly important and statistically much, much higher. As we get tonight's conversation started, some of you guys may have noticed on Instagram, and I had even mentioned it with you guys because we were out of town and didn't have the bandwidth, is Michaela and I, we went to Costa Rica and we were there for just under 2 weeks. And I wanted to share something. When I look back at this last year, self-confession here, I had put a couple of things on the milestones of what we wanted to accomplish as a company, and that was to add 2 new divisions to our business, start a new business, and incorporate it into our existing. And you guys have already seen it. One of them is Complete Med Solutions that went live the beginning of November. And then we have a corporate wellness program that we're going to be launching at the beginning of the year. Well, intertwined between all of that, we've been building a certified coaching program. We've been building a network of certified CRS facilities where we're going to be bringing our performance services into all of these facilities, literally around the globe. We're working on an international development program. We have a lot of things that are part of a 10-year plan that are starting to come in their final stages. The lesson for me going to Costa Rica is a microcosm of you over the last year. And what I mean by that is the big epiphany I had in Costa Rica is that I need to slow down. Now, don't get me wrong. If you know anybody who, might be yourself, we all have a lot on our plate. It's not like I can, just randomly say, you know what, I'm just going to get rid of all these of 100 things that you do on a daily basis. I have the same 100 that you have. I don't want to insinuate that, but let me share with you what happened when we were in Costa Rica. The first time Michaela and I went to Costa Rica, she had made reservations with a local chef in the area that literally you go to the end of the island and she has this little peninsula piece that's on the end of her property. Her husband literally catches the fish out of the ocean that day. She prepares all kinds of fresh and, these different meals from desserts to appetizers to main entrees. The whole night, she even makes her mojitos from scratch, literally. And we had gone there the first time, and it's absolutely breathtaking. The dinner is staged right at sunset, so you get to see the sun go down. Last time we were there, literally horses galloped by us, wild horses, which you see in Costa Rica, literally just galloping by us on the beach. Michaela was kind enough, and she had reserved for us to do that dinner. Well, in Costa Rica during the month of November, that is the very tail end of their wettest season of the year. And we flew in on a Friday and we weren't scheduled to go to that dinner until the following Wednesday. Well, the first night we were there, torrential downpours, but each day thereafter, it became less and less rain. Well, the day of the Wednesday, the original forecast was 0 rain whatsoever. At about 3 o'clock, the skies opened up. Well, the direction that the way that MapQuest had taken us in the past is literally down this very rugged dirt road that runs adjacent to the beach. Well, because I didn't think about, is there an alternative route? We went down, started to make our way. We left an hour early to go to our dinner. The dinner was only about 30 minutes away. Well, as we're going down this dirt road, we come across a section that's literally unpassable. If you've never been to Costa Rica, well, they say it's a third world country. It's amazing. I mean, their fence posts are just made out of pieces of trees. I mean, it's very, very rustic, right? Well, we got to a point where we couldn't make the second half of the drive. So the money that we had spent on this dinner, which is quite expensive, is my point being, I should have taken the time to look at MapQuest and sought out, is there another alternative? I was so darn busy thinking about other things Even though I was relaxing at the beach, there were some other things that we were doing while we were there. I was preoccupied with that. The point is, Rob, you need to slow down and look to see if there's an alternative path. I didn't do it. We never made it in time. We wasted the time and the money, and I missed that opportunity to be with Michaela to enjoy an absolutely breathtaking dinner. Slow down, Rob. Stop and look, plan ahead, right? Ironically, the very next day, Thursday, we we were in a very small town. If you look up on Costa Rica, we were in a small town called Playa de Negro, and our Airbnb is up on top of a mountain, exactly a mile and a half away from the beach. Well, we wanted to go into town to pick up some items, so we went into another small town that was adjacent. It was about 5, 6 miles away. Well, because again, I wasn't paying attention, I let my phone get tired. Well, I had my phone plugged in so that it would charge, and we were using it for MapQuest to go to this other town because you have to go down some dirt roads and things that don't seem like roads are actually roads. To make a long story short, we pull into this small little town. Here I am, typical tourist, right? I'm looking around on my phone. I've got the wire from the charger from the dashboard going to my phone. We come into this town, there's 2 grocery stores there, and I pull right into town, houses all around it. I took my phone, I put it in the middle console, went inside the grocery store, came back out, and you guys can probably predict what happened. They stole my phone. And so, you know, how hard would it have been for me just to use some common sense? Not that it's a bad area, but an ounce of prevention goes a long way. I was so busy getting into town, trying to get what I needed to get back. And if you guys ever get a chance, you got to look at a stand-up show that Jerry Seinfeld did, talking about why are we always in a rush to get to somewhere else? We're always planning the next thing. I just looked at Michaela and I just said, Jerry Seinfeld, you know, and to get the phone back and the inconvenience of it and all that, sure, you can put a monetary figure on it, but for the sake of our conversation here tonight, it's slow down, Rob. Take your phone and unplug it, take it in with you. An ounce of prevention would have gone a long way. Come up with an alternative route to get to, you know, I left an hour and a ahead, excuse me, we left an hour ahead of time. I never got to my destination. Slow down. Stop and think about what's going on. I remember when this was a couple of years back, I remember going through the room so quickly. I tried to turn the light off and I was going so quickly, I literally missed turning off the light. It's not like the light switch is moving. Slow down, Rob. So that's a self confession on this exact subject that we're talking about tonight via Costa Rica. What is it that I've learned this year? Sure, I can have a lot of things on my plate, but I need to I need to really back up how I'm spending my time and making sure that I'm not spread so thin that I don't miss a light switch, that I don't forget to take my phone with me, that I am willing to make sure I've got a plan B, which I do for everything in my life. And because I didn't do that for Michaela, I end up missing that dinner. So stop and think about that. Hopefully you're slowing yourself down, and maybe this year you have that same aha moment. But let's uh, let's let's try to slow down a little bit more. How about that? Even if you're doing a good job with it, let's try to do a little bit better. The first thing that I want to talk about for you guys as we look at this year so far is, have you really stopped to think about the power of your off season? I know some of you guys are, everybody that's in the membership area, because we are very fortunate. We have thousands of members all over the world between different times of the year, different stages of training, different types of riding and racing. When I make this comment, you may not be in this exact scenario, but just go with me here from an illustration standpoint. If you came into 23 and you definitively went after the off season and you really, really poured into it, have you noticed how much more resilient you are physically and mentally 3, 6, 8, 10 months later? Let's just go off of a fiscal calendar. If your off season is the end of November, beginning of December, and you don't take it because you know that you're in such good shape, you're not going to feel anything negatively in March or April. You are going to start to feel it when you get to August and September. And it doesn't matter if you're riding off road, if you're racing amateur motocross, if you're a recreational rider. The problem that we run into is the riding seasons just seem to be getting longer, which I don't have a problem with the riding, but when we're asking our body to perform at a high level and you're stacking a bunch of stress on top of that, unfortunately, when you don't take an off season, it's going to bite you in the butt about 6 to 8 months later. If you think about a 12-month window, right? If you go January through December and you build yourself up into a really, really good state of fitness and you don't invest in the off season, you're then going to start to fall apart at that next stage that unfortunately will put you, if you were looking at it as kind of like tiers or even like an integer line, let's say that you start the season and you're at a plus 10 and you get to December and you're at a 0. Well, if you don't take that off season, now you're putting yourself into the negative integer line. It's going to take you twice as long to get back out of it. That's something that people don't realize. Give up 4 weeks. And if I can get you to go into it with a real commitment to the benefit associated with the off season, if I can get you to invest in that off season, am I going to be able to share? Am I going to be able to tangibly show you the benefits of that off season? Let's use a calendar. You take December off. Are you going to feel that January? A little bit. You're going to feel it in February? A little bit. It's when you get to those hotter parts of the months, when you get to May, June, and July for most of us around the world, it tends to be smoking hot. Not in Australia for you guys, obviously. Again, use it from an illustration purpose only. Our June is completely different than what's going on in Australia. But the point being is around that 6 to 8 month mark, when everybody else is starting to wilt, you're wilting with them. And if you do it year over year over year over year, it's what fast tracks us into fatigue related type diseases. And then, as you know, once you come under the grasp of a disease, it just takes more and more effort to get out of it. That's why I like to always use an illustration of integers. If you're starting at a negative 10, it's going to take you a lot more work to get back to 0 than if you're only at a -1 or 2. My goal for you is that you never, ever get into the negative. That's why we look at the biofeedback indicators so specifically. That's why we look at the consistency of the collection of data, and we just keep stacking this on top of each other over and over again. But the power of the off season has to be met with some level of reward. And this is something that I want you to really stop and think about. How many times have maybe you've done it, or if you've been around an athlete or somebody in your family during their off season, they're grumpy. They're not getting the endorphin release. They're going into it like, oh, I'm just going to do it because Robb said do it, but I really don't want to do it. That's why I was saying it's a perspective change. If I can get you to go with me here, some of our professional triathletes that have been pros for 5 to 10 years, they have enough experience that they see the benefits. Let's just go on a 10-year window. On year number 2, and that's maybe where you're at, on year number 2, you can look back at year number 1 and go, because I took an off season, I can see the benefits of the off season when I get into that June, July, August. And what that does is that creates more confidence the next time you take an off season. It creates more confidence the next time you take that 1 week off per training block. It creates more confidence when you take that 1 day per week and you really invest in it, kind of knocking that little guilty bird off your shoulder. That's why I said at the beginning of tonight's conversation, it's about perspective. If I can get you in hindsight, depending on how long you've been a member, if you have invested in a day, a week, a training week per block, and then an off season, you've already seen the benefit of it. You've seen that catapult effect benefit that we've spoken about. Well, cool. If you're new, you're doing this a lot in blind faith, like a lot of things for the first couple training blocks. And I really appreciate your blind faith, but I promise from a physiological standpoint, it does work. What becomes very, very dangerous is when you tell yourself it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's kind of like we say, whether you think whether you think you can or you cannot from a state of sports psychology, either way, you're correct. So you might as well understand, what does it take for me not to have a false sense of confidence or security in my capabilities? Have testing results that validates what you can do. Remember, because racing is really about putting your strategies from testing, and testing is about putting your training through the ropes. So do you see incredible lesson that's learned when you look back at the benefit of rest days, rest blocks, in an off season? Look at what that's done for you the second half of the year, because it's so easy to forget what we did 6 months ago. It's even harder to think about what we did a year ago. So the benefits of the off season, if you're getting ready to go into it, and if I can change your perspective by 1 degree, and you really use that as an opportunity, because you told me what your reward system is, during this 4-week block, you're actually rewarding yourself. My oasis was the beach. The trip to Costa Rica was a reward for getting complete med solutions done. That was already in the development plan. That was the reward once the task was done. You guys know my oasis is the beach. So if I get to a point where during the week, Michaela and I, our schedules allow us to be able to go to the beach, that's always the first place we're going to go, and or our boat. So you see the idea here? And it doesn't have to be materialistic stuff. It could be just maybe you like homemade sweet lemonade, and you realize, okay, if I hit all my workouts this week, I'm going to reward myself with that. Don't worry about what you think other people think about it. Who cares? Are they going to think that's silly or that's a waste of time? We don't care what other people think. What's your reward system? What's important to you? For me, every reward has to include Michaela. We love to travel together. We love, like I said, I just got back from California Monday and Tuesday of this week, and it was miserable. What I did was fun, but without Michaela, but it's very hard for me to stay motivated to the point that I literally got up at 2:30 in the morning. I got to the airport by 3:30. I literally had 2 connecting flights to California, went from the airport to the recording studio. Recording studio got finished at 8 o'clock their time, which was 11 o'clock at home. Went back to the airport, slept in the airport, and got a 6:30 flight the next morning. That's how bad I want to get back to Michaela. My point being is that what I needed to do for the business and for the, I'm not trying to hide anything from you guys. It was Jace with Gypsy Tales. You know, his schedule is pretty tight. He asked if I'd come out and do a show. So yes, we did it. But my reward is getting there, being able to spend some time with Jace, and then get back to my wife. You see how I've got to have a reward system, and you guys do as well. Okay. The second thing I want you guys to stop and think about, and it falls back into that subject again of periodization, is look at, and again, I'm going to use a calendar year. If you're sitting in calendar year December and you're able to look back at a January's season, if you're in another part of the world and your race season falls on a different calendar schedule, just stick with me on the January through December. Okay. Stop and think about when you transitioned into doing your speed work, transitioned into doing your interval work, transitioned to doing your races. How easy, that's kind of a double-edged sword. How easy was it to go fast? How easy was it to sustain that speed? Now, you guys know it as critical speed numbers on and off the motorcycle and threshold of fatigue. How long can you hold that speed before you become tired? So stop and think about this. Did you have enough of a strength base that it was easier to go fast? Did you have enough of an aerobic capacity that you could sustain that speed? Stop and think about this. Because when we step back and we look at the idea that your strength base is the size of your piston, your aerobic engine is the size of your carburetor, the capillary beds in your legs and all your muscles, those are the pipes. Those are the ones that get the byproduct out of your system, right? You could look at that as like an on off ramp on the interstate. So you're trying to bring the speed up. It creates a tremendous amount of metabolic waste, just like your exhaust pipe when your throttle's open. Did you have enough of a strength base that you could go fast? And was that level of speed, was it better than last year's? Because remember, I don't want you to just be busy for the sake of being busy. That's why we want you to test yourself so that you can have confidence in the work that you're doing is working. Now we're looking at an entire year. When we look back at the last 6 months, we look back at the last 12 months. Because this is where I want you to start looking at things in stages. If you're noticing that every time you did a round of assessments, you got better numbers, did that translate to the motocross track? If it didn't translate to the motocross track, was that mental or was it physical? We looked at the first one, and that was making sure you're coming in as fresh and you're ready to catapult throughout the year, preseason, then pre-competitive, and then competitive phase. Now we're stepping back and we're looking at the idea, did I have enough base strength? Did I have enough aerobic capacity? Did I have enough capillary beds that I could enjoy that top end speed? because, and you've heard us talk about this with the pros quite a bit. Pros don't work on trying to get faster through the year. They try to maintain the fitness of their baseline, and they maintain it through the year, trying to avoid injury or illness. Now, that sounds very cliche-ish as we sit here in a webinar together, but stop and think about that. What we're trying to do is make it easy to go fast. That's why I want you to go back to the illustration I've shared with you previously. If I was going to pay you $100 to go 60 miles an hour on a motorcycle, would you choose a 450 or would you choose a 65? They both have wheels. They're both a motorcycle, but you know that the bigger the engine, the easier it is to go fast. And I want that to be an aha moment for you as you transition to preseason. The only focus is to maximize strength and maximize aerobic capacity. When you drop in any kind of interval work, that should be only introduced when we get around the pre-competitive, competitive phase. Stop and think about that. So like when you're using the training blocks, if you're in your preseason phase and I'm asking you in the schedule to do a hard interval, you got to remember, I'm putting the training blocks together. There's no way, with us having a couple thousand members, there's no way that I could put together a customized periodization schedule in there where this match is preseason, this match is pre-competitive, and this match is competitive. So that's why you guys have to use a little bit of your judgment, looking at your races and going backwards. If you're in a preseason mode, your lifting needs to be your major focus. When you do the cardio, just move everything into zone 2, whether it's a heart rate ladder, negative split, pacing blocks, even intervals themselves. If it's a 1 mile interval on the bicycle, just do it in zone 2. Just go right up to the very top of it. You've got a 10 beat difference. You're still going to get the physiological benefits. You just got to stay focused on what the season's purpose is. Preseason, maximize aerobic capacity, maximize physical strength. Move into pre-competitive. You're still building strength. You're still building aerobic capacity. Now you're starting to add a little bit of speed work, which actually increases your raw power. And then when we move into competitive phase, we're always working on maintaining the aerobic base. We don't want to lose our strength. And we now want to start improving our anaerobic threshold or our lactate tolerance, our sprint speed. And you stack those. That's why the other side of our business is completely customized. Because then if I'm working with that athlete, I'm taking their race season, building it backwards, and we build each one of those blocks. So you've got to have to use a little bit of judgment as to what your race season consists of and where you're at in the different training phases in the membership. The next one I want you to look at, number 3 out of the 6, is consistency. This one is so, so important. Now, when I say consistency, the first thing you're going to think of is, oh, well, Rob wants me to do everything that's on the schedule. No, I don't. No, I don't. Unless you can absorb doing 100% of the consistency. I don't live in a glass house. I hope you don't act like you do. It's a very, very difficult place to live. And those who don't live in a glass house shouldn't throw stones, right? Those that live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, I think is what it is. So here's what I mean by consistency. If you keep getting home from work 2 days a week and you've worked on your time management, you've done everything you can, but it just seems like at least once, maybe twice a week, you plan on getting home at 6 o'clock and you don't get home till 6:30, and you've only got, like when you laid out your week, you only had 1 hour to work out, 6 to 7 p.m. When you're driving home and you see it's 6:05, it's 6:10, are you starting to become impatient? If you are, I want you to go back and ask yourself, did you come into the season rested? Did you really invest in the off season? Because remember, once you get pissed off, you've lost control. Stop and think about how important that is. When you blocked it out in your schedule to work out from 6 to 7, did you bemoan that you got home at 6:20 and then you're rushing to change clothes? Or, and I've seen this happen, you get to at 6:30 when you roll in the door and you only gave yourself till 7 o'clock. I'm using your words, not mine. And you're like, well, screw it. I wanted to do an hour. Coach has it on the schedule. I've got to do an hour, but I've only got 30 minutes. What'd you do with the 30 minutes you have left? Remember how we talk over and over again about controlling the controllables? Please think about this. What I want you to say to yourself is, I've got 30 minutes to work on hydration. I've got 30 minutes to work on eating. I have 30 minutes to work on sports psychology, or I have 30 minutes to work on my soft tissue maintenance. Control the controllables. Stop and think about it. A self confession, myself to you, I don't work out on Tuesdays and Wednesdays because those are my heaviest call days with my clients. And I spent literally 6 months. I said to myself, all right, I do my Australian call. I do that from 5 in the morning until 6. And I said to myself, Michaela has to get up by 7 and because of some of her clients. So I'm like, all right, when I get done with my Australian call, I'm going to go directly in and get on the bicycle. Well, you get a couple of questions, and I thought I would be done by 6 a.m. and I get done at 6:30 or 6:40 or whatever. So my whole thing was I kept trying to make it work. It was blocked out on my schedule, but I started noticing consistently I wasn't able to work out. So what did I do? I just moved my one of my rest days because I just moved it to Tuesday. You say, but Rob, you said you don't work out on both Tuesday or Wednesday. Yep. As frustrating as it is, because I used to only take one day of rest per week, my work schedule doesn't allow me. So I have to take Tuesday and Wednesday as my rest days. See, but the thing is when I'm looking at those Tuesdays and Thursdays, I don't look at it. And by no means was it an easy thing for me to do. I don't want to come across like, oh, yeah, but I have to practice what I preach, right? What I had to ask myself is you've tried moving your schedule around 150 times. You can't get it to work. So I have to make what I've got work. So what do? I focus on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I make sure I hit my water. I make sure that I'm sitting on a tennis ball, a lacrosse ball. Here's evidence of right here on my desk. If you guys can see that, okay. There's my lacrosse ball. I've got one underneath my right glute and one under my foot all day long. Okay. I hit my hydration. I make sure that I snack every couple hours. And I do, unfortunately, the way my business is set up is I have to work in 4 hour blocks. I know the magic number is 50 minutes per hour, but I have to work in 4 hour blocks. So I do 4 hour blocks. I do 30-minute calls back to back for 4 hours. Then I take a food break. Then I do a 4 hour block, and then I do a food break. And then doesn't matter beyond the scope of that. Just leave it there. But my point being is I kept trying to adjust that, and you're doing the same thing. Control the controllables. When I say consistency, be consistent on the days that your workouts get interrupted. Make sure that at the end of the day, you've still nailed your hydration. If you get home and you've only got 10 minutes, walk 5 minutes out, walk 5 minutes back, go get some fresh air. Do something that you know is going to help. Stare at a black dot, work on your mental development. Go lay down and work on your diaphragmatic breathing. Go pour an Epsom salt bath, right? You're normally going to take a shower or bath after you work out. So now you're just going to add 10 minutes to that window because that's all you've got left from 6:50 to 7 o'clock. And then you normally would take a shower and then start to get your family ready for dinner. That's what I'm talking about with consistency. Stop and think about the lessons that we learned this year, because when we look at fitness as like finances, small little deposits, when it's time to take one of those withdrawals, we want to make sure that we're fed, rested, and hydrated. We have good flexibility, strong mental development skills, right? So we start putting all that together. Consistency is working with what you've proven is available. I have to make my Tuesday and Wednesday work, even though it's not what I would like it to be. It's just the way the nature of the business has formed it to be. And trust me, I've moved clients around, I've moved my day around. But the problem that we run into is when we have clients on the other side of the world, that's the part that makes it a little bit more stickier to move the parts around. Just giving you clarity, giving you in 100% transparency of why it's difficult for me to move those any further. The next thing I want you to look at, number 4 of 6, is I want you to think about when we look at your data dumps, and let's go to January of 22, and you start dropping in some races and you have your testing results and you have the building up all the way through December. Let's just use even numbers. Let's say that you race once a month. Well, your data dump in February, data dump number 2, should have less frustrations than what data dump number 1 did. Now, for some of you who could compare year over year, it's even better because 2 years ago, you raced in January, you had your frustrations, but you also trained going back to that the next year. So each year, your data dumps become exponentially more important, because our goal is from race 1 to race 2, you've identified your frustrations, you've broken down what you can control and what you can't control. The things that you can control, you simply fix, and the things that you can't is what you focus on in training. Well, you do that from January through December. Now you get to the end of 21, you've got your December data dump. That essentially is your blueprint on how you're going to start this 2023 season. So you're at the beginning of the year, January. Each data dump gets better and better, which is you guys interpret it as less and less frustrations. You're using that information because remember, you're getting beat by your weaknesses. That's the only way your competition is beating you, is by your weaknesses, whether you're putting them on yourself or whether you're allowing them to expose them. That's how they're beating you. Well, race over race over race, the goal is to convert those frustrations into strengths. And then you are racing with those strengths to expose your competition's weakness, whether that's in riding and or racing. Well, now we come into the beginning of 23. You had your blueprint, you had all of your race data. Those race data profiles give you all the characteristics of it. You now know that you're training to the demands of the schedule that you're laying out for 2023. Well, as we started to come to the end of 2023, or depending on when you're listening to this recording, at the end of a fiscal calendar, right? What you're doing is using your last 6 months to see how your frustrations have been systematically removed. Now your data dump in the end of your season, let's say you took the month of December off, you have all of your data dumps up to November. Literally, you take the November database, the data dump, and that becomes your blueprint for moving into the next year. Now, it's not that we want to discard those data dumps, because when you have a data dump on a venue, and if let's just make an assumption that the race is about the same time during the year, you can go in and figure out your calorie burn rate, your sweat rate, all of those pieces of information that for the average person is what undermines their capabilities. And that's where I hope you have a huge beaming smile on your face, because you've collected data dumps and you've accumulated those over all these different venues. And if they're in about the same time of the year, you know how much you should drink because you know your sweat rate. You know how to set yourself up. You know what I mean by set yourself up is you've been to that venue. Are you going to eat at Chipotle? Are you going to Outback? Are you going to hit a local grocery store? Are you packing it yourself because you found out the hard way there was nothing out there? They were, the race venue was an hour away from local town. That information is absolutely priceless because it keeps you from making any more mistakes. Remember, when you think about those 4 pillars, you have preparation, fitness, strategy, and recovery. That's what all these data dumps help you remember. How much did I sweat? How much do I need? How hot was it? Was it dry? Was it wet? Do I need roll-offs? Do I need tear-offs? Am I eating at Chipotle or am I eating out of a cooler? You have that. Now think about what you've done so far this year. When you look at that data dump, recognize that you're essentially setting your blueprint up for next year. So as tedious as it may seem, and you see it in your notes all the time after a race, almost every single post-race recovery protocol that's in the membership area says what? Please take the time to data dump this event. You should be putting your compression and rebound settings. Where are your forks and the triple clamps? What was your air pressure? What was your gear ratios? What were you running? And more importantly, why were you running it? If the track changed and you made suspension changes, which direction did you go? Stiffer, softer? Why? Spring settings? What did you change and why? As tedious as it seems, and this is usually very tedious when the race didn't go well, but when the race doesn't go well, as I've teased you, people want to turn over every finite rock to figure out why. But then when they win, most people won't take the time. And then they go, oh, it doesn't matter. Well, if you don't have it written down, I don't know about you, but I can't remember a race that I did 6, 7, 8 months ago, especially all the small details. But if I have it written down, and again, this is exactly what the factory teams are doing, treat yourself like that. Very, very important. Now, what's interesting is in number 5, I've already given it away, is taking your end of season, and we're there again, or rather the end of the calendar year. We're going to say season and calendar year are synonymous, is now you've got that blueprint. And the reason why I think it's so important, and that's why it's number 5, is because not only do you have a blueprint for next season, because you have all the individual races, it gives you a chance to put that confidence helmet, that helmet of confidence rather, on your head, because you've seen and you're able to quantify how much have you incrementally improved nutritionally, range of motion and flexibility, your strength, your endurance, your sprint speed, your mental toughness, your resiliency, your time management skills, the consistency of getting your workouts done, the consistency of, like we talked about earlier, you're making lemonade out of lemons. You've got 20 minutes, you use it, control the controllables. All that falls into place, right? Well, now what you're able to do is see what you've done. You've seen how much you've improved. And as the old saying goes, if you know what you did to create success, you can duplicate it. That's why this program is called the Blueprint of Success. Well, where are you at right now? Do you have all this collected data? I would say yes. You wouldn't be investing these hour blocks every week to hear about a subject point or look at things from a slightly different perspective, listen to other members' questions, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to look at it from the standpoint that you're looking at, what did I learn this year? Am I fitter? Am I faster? Cool. How did I get it? How much have I improved? And what do I need to do to keep that percentage of improvement going? Remember, our program is KISS, keep it simple and sustainable. Sure, when you first started the program, maybe you didn't understand all the language, but as I've teased you before, you didn't get into the sport at whatever age already understanding all the complexities associated with suspension setup, but you work with it now. And every time you go to the track, you have to reset your suspension. See, people think nutrition and hydration, it's like hear it once and you're always going to remember it. No. Can you articulate to me what the glycogen synthase enzyme is? Can you answer why the warm-up activates the lactic acid shuffle? You might be able to go back through your notes. That's why I leave little hints in your daily schedule so that you don't have to commit everything to memory. You just get another, oh, that's right. I forgot I need to foam roll my calves because we just did this or just did that. Oh, wow. He put in there that he wants me to do my shoulders. And that's because we're doing a little bit more pulling, whether it's in the gym or on the motorcycle workout. That's my job to serve you as a physiologist. Don't just foam roll what I put in there as a hyperlink, because the hyperlink is there based on what I know you just smoked during that workout. You see how it just takes care of itself. And then number 6, and this is one that, again, we're sitting at the end of the season. Have you noticed that your biomechanics have gotten better? Have you noticed that your biomechanics have gotten better? I always want you guys to have a great relationship with a sports chiropractor and a sports massage therapist. And in an ideal world, the massage therapist is underneath the same roof as the chiropractor. If you go back to the discussion that muscles are the only thing that move bones out of alignment, and bones that are out of alignment will always keep muscles tight. So if you get that working for you instead of against you, you won't dab your foot. You'll be able to keep that inside leg up and it won't fall. No matter how rough the track is, you'll always be able to keep that inside leg up. You'll be able to look far enough ahead. You're working on your balance. You'll be able to grab that bike when it wants to start to side swap. All of these various things come together. But what is so incredibly fascinating is so many people, and a lot of them you race against, they think biomechanics is like, what is that? That's just a bunch of big words and a bunch of big concepts. Well, it's kind of like you getting frustrated that your chain keeps derailing and you've got a bent swing arm or you've got a bent chain guide or you got a bent sprocket. Well, if it's out of alignment, of course the chain's going to derail. Well, if you've been noticing that you're still a year later not any better in right hand corners and you keep dabbing your foot and your knees constantly swollen up, I'm hoping that you're looking at that going, hey, I noticed this year that did not happen. You know why? Because because of your commitment rather to soft tissue maintenance. It doesn't have to be you go to the chiropractor or massage therapist every week. Remember, my my ability to be able to serve you as a physiologist is the chiropractor and the massage therapist helps us find muscle patterns. They're able to show us when things get pulled out of alignment. Well, my job is to ask, why is it being pulled out of alignment? Is it because it's an overuse issue on the motorcycle, an overuse issue off the motorcycle, meaning cross training and or at work? If you notice that your shoulders always roll forward, is that because you're sitting at a desk all day? Maybe we should do a little bit more work on the back of your shoulders and your upper neck. And it's not That's where a massage therapist is going to help us. But in this webinar that we're doing here tonight, I want you to realize, hey man, I noticed my time with my writing coach is getting more productive. Is that because your biomechanics are better? Because everything hinges off of fundamental biomechanics. If you can't, this is a double negative. If you can't touch your toes, that means you have tight hamstrings, which means every time you put your foot up in a corner, your tight hamstrings want to put that foot down. You know it as a toe dab. You know it as, ouch, that hurts my knee or my hips. Ouch, that hurts my lower back. All because we have tight hamstrings. And you're like, Rob, I'm doing Epsom salt bath. I'm foam rolling. Why is my hamstrings still so tight? Well, let's go look at your pelvic girdle. Is it possibly tilted one way or another, which is causing the muscles to stay super tight, hypertonic? The good news is, I think for a lot of you guys, you have better range of motion. And I want you to just kind of look back at this last year and go, huh, what an epiphany. I have better range of motion. And this is what's so cool. When you have better range of motion, I'm going to say it a couple times, please write it down. When you have optimized range of motion, you have a lower heart rate, you have a lower calorie burn rate, you have a lower sweat rate, you have less strain on the muscle. Now take all that and turn it around. You'll have increased speed, increased endurance, because the muscles aren't working against themselves. They become more efficient. It's kind of like the difference between being able to just blitz a section and you're able to keep the rear wheel tracking and the everything's balanced, versus you're facing and casing and bouncing off everything. Think about chiropractic and massage as just smoothing out everything. Because remember, muscles pull on bones. And if the muscles are what we consider too tight, they're what we call hypertonic. The bones will be pulled out of alignment by the tight muscles. And then if you get a massage and the massage doesn't stick, it's because the bones that the muscles are attached to are so out of alignment. It's just like tuning a guitar string. But if I can get you at the close of this conversation here tonight, hey, how do I improve my speed and my endurance? Have better biomechanics. What's the foundation of better biomechanics? Muscles and bones working together, not fighting against each other. It's free money, free money. And then you look at everything that we've just spoken about tonight. Let me review those real quick. Number one is seeing the power of the off season. Number two is seeing the benefits of the preseason training. Number three is consistency. Number four is looking at your data dump. Number five is looking at recognizing that your data dump is now your blueprint for the upcoming season. And then optimizing biomechanics, increasing speed and endurance. So again, guys, I know these are subjects that we've spoken about separately, but when we look back at this year, for me, like I said, Costa Rica was really a big hit in the back of my head. Slow the heck down, man. What are you doing? But when I look at all of these that we've talked about here tonight, again, I'm drinking from the same cup, you know. And I hope that this has really resonated with you guys tonight, because this will definitely take you to another level as we move into yet another month right around the corner starting next Friday. With the time that we have here, I'll get through. We have 5 listener questions here tonight. Number one is, what would you recommend for a warm-up? And this is a really good question, because when you look at a warm-up, a lot of times we have to ask ourselves, by the time I finish warming up at my pit, am I going right to the starting grid within a couple minutes in the gate and then dropping shortly thereafter? Otherwise, it can almost become where the warming up at your rig can actually be a waste of calories. Notice I didn't say it was going to make you tired. A lot of people, especially anybody who's not a member, they have a tendency to say, well, if I'm over here sweating because it's 100 degrees outside, I'm warmed up. Well, there's a distinct difference between being metabolically warmed up and just being physically hot. Big difference. So what I'm saying is, I don't want you to burn 100, 120 calories warming up and then go and sit for 35, 40 minutes and then roll into the gate and drop, because the benefits that we were trying to get out of the warm up have essentially evaporated by the time you got into the gate. So if you're looking at, if you race off road like a GNCC or some of these big amateur races where you could be sitting pre-staging for an hour, what you want to do is come up with a routine. And notice I didn't say do this or do that, because everybody's got the things that they like and don't like. The idea about a warm up is just getting the heart rate up, preferably 100, 110. And the idea is You can do that with walking lunges, a jump rope, running in place, burpees, push-ups, um, Jacob's ladders, whatever you want to do. But try it. Try it in practice. Try it at home. Come up with a routine. I'm not going to say it's this. What I do want you to realize is we need every muscle from your earlobes to your toenails to be engaged at some level. We want everything working and firing at the same time. That's where your heart rate monitor can become very, very advantageous because we're trying to avoid that big gap of sitting there idle to a minute into the race. Your heart rate just goes through the moon. So the warm up is super important. And what would I recommend? Doing something that allows you to go from your warm up on the bike and you're sweating profusely. And when the gate drops, your body thinks it's already been out there for a while. But remember, look at the warm up notes that are there. The magical number is 20 minutes, 10 minutes even tempo, and then 10 minutes of some on and off. Because what you're doing is you purposely want to accumulate a little bit of lactic acid, but you're just kind of priming the motor. You're trying to avoid that big lactic acid dump. Number two, when having sore muscles from a hard workout, is it better to wait till the muscles are not sore to continue working out? And that's always a tough one because that rule of 48 is always working for you. What you do today, let's use it during the week. What you do on Monday, you're going to feel on Wednesday. That's what we refer to as the rule of 48. The difficult part is most of us, when we're really sore, we think, oh, we shouldn't work out. It's the exact opposite because when you work out, and I know sometimes it can be really hard to get started, just make the workout super easy. Even if I have something on the warm up that maybe is 10 minutes and you're extremely sore and you've only got an hour to work out, warm up for 20 minutes and then just take 10 minutes out of something else in the workout. Let me rephrase that. Take something out of the main set because you still want the warm up and the cool down. And what happens is once you get the muscles moving, it vasodilates. And because your nutrition is so good, you're bringing those macro and micronutrients that actually speeds up recovery. That's why I think it's very, very important that that you don't smoke yourself. Now, again, it's very difficult, especially when you're moving from off season into preseason. Of course, there's going to be soreness. You're not doing anything wrong. But again, I'm going to talk like we're on webinar number 77. So if this is your first one, please be patient with yourself. I'm going to make an assumption that you've got your nutrition dialed. So if you have a lot of muscle soreness, it could be because you're not eating enough protein. We've talked about that. I think you've got that covered. When we look at the idea that you're taking the time and foam rolling and maybe doing contrast therapy, you're doing some things to facilitate recovery to complement the intake of protein, like sleeping, properly hydrated, then yes, I think you go ahead and you move into the next workout. It's actually going to speed up the recovery process at the end of the day. This one, it was actually from the same individual talking about a cold plunge. And what had happened was the cold plunge actually had more of a negative impact on the athlete. Woke up with a headache, high stress level, didn't sleep very well. And this goes back to the idea that we want to keep the extremes to a minimum. And this individual knew that, and we talked about it via email. But for the sake of you guys, I thought it was a very, very powerful subject to talk about because you might be somebody who reads a lot or you listen to podcasts a lot, and you've got people, it seems like right now, contrast therapy is the big thing. I remember last year, as ironic as it sounds, I remember breathing through your nose was the big thing last year. A couple of years back, it was intermittent fasting. A couple of years before that, it was HIIT training. Remember P90X and Beachbody? It's always something. And it's interesting to me that as you go through the ebb and flows, it always comes back to the same it gets it back inside the same four walls. Contrast therapy actually works. Number one, make sure that it's at a temperature range that you enjoy. Got to remember, if you get around a 10 to 20 degree range of deviation, you're going to reap the benefits. Does it have to be 120 and 60 degrees? No, to me, that's too extreme. And as I've shared with you guys, if you're doing something that you absolutely have a disdain, what are the statistical chances you're going to keep doing it? You're only human. It's not that you're a wimp or you're not dedicated or whatever. It's just miserable. And you're not getting paid to do it, so you're not going to do it. The other thing too is, get the temperature ranges to be nominal. Like I said, 15, 20 degrees, the body will react to it and do it for shorter period of times. There's no magic number. You can start with 3 minutes, 5 minutes. Obviously, if you have very, very big extremes, you're going to have to cut it down to like literally 20 seconds, 30 seconds, because you're essentially shell shocking the system as if when you're doing the cold, as if you had fallen into a frozen lake, like we spoke about. So my point on bringing that up is contrast therapy right now seems to be the big buzzword. They want you to go in there and freeze yourself and leverage brown body fat and all that. Is that documentation and science true? Absolutely. But you have to put it in the perspective that works for you. Next question. When doing the blue workouts during the off season, you said to keep it no more than 30 minutes. Does that include the warm up and the cool down? And the answer is yes. A very good question once again, because when we're dealing with the off season, what we're really doing, my job as a physiologist for you, is really trying to monitor stress. And during that off season, just like during a rest week, we're trying to keep the volume down and the intensity down. And I'll go a little bit detailed because we're doing this webinar live together. When you back off on the training, you have less of a depletion in the blood cells. And that could be hydration, electrolytes, micro and macronutrients, all of that. Well, at the same time, because you guys are not cutting back on your calories below your resting calorie needs, remember, please don't let that slide by you. When you have a day of rest, all you've got to do is go into your calorie burn rate and see what your average resting calorie burn rate is and make sure you eat that many calories during your rest day. When you move into an off season and you're worried about gaining body fat, just make sure that you don't eat more calories than what you need to sustain life. Good news is you've captured all the data, you know it's accurate. For some of you, you have multiple years of data, and as your muscle mass has changed, the amount of calories you need to sustain life, it's fluctuated as well, but you already know what the number is. So when you're decreasing the amount of stress on the blood cells and you're still maintaining your nutrition intake, what it does is it just makes your cells extremely healthy at every level. Hydration, electrolytes, organelles, micro and macronutrients, all in the blood. Okay. So that's very important. When we say keep it to 30 minutes, that's total. I started the end of my season doing nothing 3 weeks ago, and this past Saturday, the weather was great. I went to the track to practice. So do I need to start over at the end of the season and do nothing since I had 4 runs of intense riding? Nope. And this is, again, another priceless question because you didn't throw the baby out with the bathwater there. What I think is interesting is how cool is it? You feel like when you've taken an off season, you feel like all of your fitness has gone out the back door. And I see this happening quite a bit with our endurance market athletes. If I have somebody that's training for a marathon and the marathon comes and goes and they recover for 4 to 6 weeks and they decide they're going to do a pickup race, they end up doing, I'll go so far as to say probably 90% of the people that go and do a pickup race end up setting a personal best for that distance. So if you train for a marathon and then you go do a pickup 10K, you haven't been training to do speed work for a 10K, but you'll probably run your best 10K you ever have. That's what we refer to as the overload principle. You've been training for a marathon, you're running 20, 30 miles a week, and then all of a sudden you go back to running 10 or 15 miles and you do a 10K run. Your body's like, this is a walk in the park. My warm up is usually longer than the race is, the 10K race. That's what I think is cool about this. When you've come off of an off season, it's pretty interesting. You can jump right back in. Hey, you might feel a little bit rusty. Remember, that's more of an eye-hand coordination thing, but you can still sustain it. You may feel a little bit rusty. Your technique may be off a little bit, but like Hayden Deegan said, interviewing with Jace, it's not like you forget how to ride. Sure, you might feel a little bit rusty, but I think even that's a little more psychosomatic than anything else. And I've said this to you guys before. Most of you as amateurs do more than the pros do. Most pros put on their bike about 3 hours to 4 hours a week. And I would say 2 of those 3 hours is skills and drills versus raw motoing down. It's all about skill, attention to details. And yet, especially at the facilities that we see around this country, I was talking to an athlete earlier today who's at a facility, and he puts almost an hour and a half to 2 hours per day, and that's 5 days a week. Think about that. 10 hours, that's just on the motorcycle. Fortunately, the parents listen, and my client only has their child riding 3 days a week, and they keep them to an hour and a half each time. and half of that skills and drills, and the other one is half moto. Because what I don't want to do is I don't overstep my bounds. If you're at a facility, you need to listen to the riding coach and do what they do. But what we're doing as a relationship is making sure that the residual fatigue on the body doing what's being done there has to be within your parameters, and we have to measure to make sure that you're absorbing it. So I think this is cool. Have an off season, and then your buddies come into town, and you're able to just jump back on. And like I said, you might be a little rusty, but how cool is it that you can just resume pretty much where you left off, and each ride gets a little bit better and a little bit better. That's the power of recharging those batteries, as we spoke about at the initial part of this conversation tonight. So, well, guys, I can't thank you enough. Again, those that are here with us live, thank you. Like I said, we've got a couple thousand members, and it is tough. I mean, recognizing finding a day and a time that works for everybody. I don't expect everybody to be here live. That's why we archive them. We do get about a 75% re-listen rate, which is exciting. So I do appreciate the fact that you guys do come back and listen to it. And I'm glad you're updating your notes. So until next time, you guys be safe. I want to thank you again for being members. We are on the cusp of Thanksgiving. Please take the time to slow down. I'm taking a spoonful of my medicine. Take the time to love those around you. Be thankful for the gifts of health and wellness that we have, the good people around you. And you guys be safe, and we'll catch up with you in a couple of weeks. Happy holidays and happy Thanksgiving. Thanks so much.